Assalamu alaikum. I am Muhammad Saad bin Wakar, and we are going to talk about Islamophobia today. As it stands, the impression of Muslims in the international community is not really what the Muslims would love it to be. It is really in a situation of turmoil, and Muslims are not really enjoying the highest of liberties in the world. Islamophobia is a disease that shouldn't be there in the first place, but because of the promotion of the Westerns, it has gotten to a point where Muslims are naturally seen as terrorists. Uh, in this presentation, we'll be seeing how it manifests, what are the major factors behind it, and why do Muslims get such a bad impression, and what are the major factors revolving around Islamophobia. And let's just start with the presentation. We'll first look at the basic introduction of it and how the term was coined in the first place. The dread, resentment, and prejudice against Muslims is known as Islamophobia, especially when we're talking about Islam and how it can be seen as a geopolitical force. And when the Westerns see it, or any Islamophobic person who see it as a tool of terror, he's definitely going to get Islamophobic kicks in. And the regions, the term was first coined in roughly around 20th century and 1970 to be more precise, and then it got a boost and it started to be used more prominently in the 1980s, and the situation has gotten to the point where it is. And Islamophobia, when we talk about it, is comprised of two major factors. It can be factored into terrorism as well as racism. Well, many of you would think, yeah, we can understand terrorism. Why is it racism? Islam is not a race. Well, let me explain. I'll explain to you later. Uh, let's just start about the racism factor. When we talk about racism, the biggest racist community in the West has been proven to be the United States, obviously. And basically, they are racist towards anyone who's not a white Anglo-Saxon. Basically, the racism or the rate of racism in America is probably the highest in the world. So obviously, where everyone is suffering, Muslims are going to be suffering there as well. So it's not really that Muslims are the only ones taking the blunt in America, but the racism factor there is probably the highest. And we'll also be describing why is Islamophobia related to race again. Islam is not a race. Well, let me answer your question. While it can purely be subjective, Islamophobia can definitely be related to racism. So my answer is Islamophobia, racism. Yes, Islamophobia is a racism. Consider the Christchurch incident in 2019. 51 Muslims were killed. The man came and he started shooting everybody. He did discriminate anyone. And what harm were they doing anyway? They're in the mosques. They were praying and they were minding basically their own business. And he went there and he killed everybody because he had some agenda from the past that he wanted to satisfy himself of, and he thus killed everybody. Islamophobia can be called as a racism that has its malice targeted towards the presentation or expression of being a Muslim. So when it comes to the expression, basically, a person who is Islamophobic won't be able to tell a difference between a Sikh having a beard and wearing a turban and a Muslim having a beard. Having a beard is an expression of Islam, and thus that causes them to think that the person mentioned or the person targeted is a Muslim. And thus, the presentation of your appearance is definitely related to Islamophobia, as Islam promotes beards. Anyone with a beard is a Muslim. That's the wrong impression. Thus, it can be related to your appearance. Thus, it can be called a racial problem. We'll look at some of the examples modeled after the definition of anti-Semitism by IHRA to help us understand the manifestation of Islamophobia. So first, the attempted murder of a woman and her daughter just because it was justified as revenge for the Parson Green terror attacks. Well, you can't really do it considering the past, the Crusaders killed so many Muslims in Jerusalem. At the same time, Muslims didn't kill any residents, and they didn't destroy any residents. They didn't kill anyone in Jerusalem when they conquered it. So Pulling up past agendas for just for your own satisfaction is not really the thing to do here. We're not really in the Stone Age here. You have laws for it. Look at if the law justifies it or if the law even allows for it. It's not going to, and you're still doing it, and you're still calling Muslims as terrorists. That's not really going to be the justifiable thing now. That's not really sensible. There was another case where a Muslim convert was tortured by two women. I mean, why does Muslims have to get so much hate? I'm not really being biased, even though I am a Muslim and I am going to have some biased comments on it. I'm trying to be as unbiased as I can. But let's just say that when we look logically, when a Muslim does it, it gets so much promotion and it gets so much heat from everybody that a Muslim is acting like a terrorist, that he tortures someone. And when someone else do it, it can be justifiable as a case of Islamophobia. That's not really something that I'd agree with. That's not something that should be done, and that is equally as heinous as a Muslim doing that. Then why Muslims get so much promotion, and why do they get labeled as terrorists? I don't understand it. A Muslim woman was attacked because she was wearing a hijab while she was going to pick up her children from school. That's just ridiculous. Even these organizations that are paid, that I'll be talking about later, are simply using these slogans that no hijabs and no mosques. And I mean, why is having a mosque damaging to you, and why is having no mosque advantageous for you? That's not really anything that a sane human should think about. Or there should be no such promotion about these topics, but there is, so we'll have to deal with them. Islamophobia causing people to go completely insane and thus hurting people who weren't even Muslim. That's the same case as appearance. Sikh having a beard is the same as a Muslim having a beard, because there's no label for them to be a Muslim. There's no label for anyone that can prove them to be Muslim. So basically, an expression of being a Muslim causes Islamophobia. That's really ridiculous, but that's something we'll have to deal with. Again, now we'll be talking about how it can be related to terrorists or terrorism. Well, let's just say that Islam is not a religion that promotes terrorism, and in no way does it say to hurt someone to justify your own things is a logical thing to do. But in the recent past, when we look logically without bias, the organizations like ISIS, the organizations like Al-Qaeda, they have done some things that really doesn't justify Islam in the slightest. That's not something that Islam would promote, or something that Islam teaches its followers. So that's another problem that we're facing, the wrong impression because of these terror attacks. And again, even if they're at fault, they get far more promotion than non-Muslim terrorists would get. How many terrorist organizations do you know that are not Muslim? You won't be able to think about them in a split second, but you will be able to think about ISIS and Al-Qaeda, because there is so much promotion. The media covers so much of it. And let's talk about the fact that Muslims, when they commit a terror attack, they get so much promotion. Talk about 9/11 and Christchurch incident. Christchurch incident definitely got some promotion, but at the same time, it wasn't on the same level as 9/11, even though the scale of the attack was different. A heinous crime is a heinous crime, and it should get equal hate. But because one was done by a Muslim and because the other wasn't done by a Muslim, the promotion for them was completely on a different level. And even I heard an Australian leader that said that it was completely justifiable. It was good for him to kill Muslims. I mean, why was it? They weren't hurting anybody. But he said it was justifiable, and that's not something that I would agree with. That's really racism again. Hurting Muslims is not something that's justifiable by any means. So why do Muslims suffer from such a bad reputation? Well, Islam states, do not fight whom did not fight. Islam has stated its policy for wars quite clearly. And then when we talk about Islam's policy, these terrorist organizations haven't done their part well, and they haven't studied what Islam teaches in the first place. Do not hurt children, do not hurt elderly, do not hurt women. And when they attack, especially when attacks like 9/11, when we consider them, there was no discrimination of who was killed. So that's not something that I'd agree with again. Islam doesn't teach that, but that gives the impression, thus they Thus, the media starts promoting Islam as a terrorist religion, and that's not something that's right in the slightest. That shouldn't be the case. Again, the 9/11 attacks. Holy Prophet ﷺ never ordered his followers to burn people's tents and kill people who were uninvolved. Islam has specifically ordered not to kill innocent civilians. These supposed Muslim organizations constantly kill civilians, thus tarnishing the holy name of Islam. Let's look at some of the contrasting views that cause Islamophobia. Islam is a religion that's static. Well, that's their belief. Islam is not a static religion. It is definitely a religion that can accommodate with times, that can definitely have solutions for problems of any time and any place. But that's not really the belief that Islamophobic people have. They believe that it's a static religion, and it has very selective information and very selective way of life. But that's not really the case. It's a religion that's very adaptable and very diverse. That's totally the wrong impression they have. It is an unaccommodating religion. That's their belief, that's their opinion, but that's not something that's right. They believe they use the term kafir as kafir is anyone who's not a Muslim, but that's not really the case. We're not really here to cut anyone's head. If it's possible, Islam would never have ordered anyone to kill. But the thing is, the term kafir gets manipulated quite a lot. That's not really something that Islam says. The kafir is a very specific term for a very specific person, and it gets generalized so easily, thus giving Islamophobia a new meaning. Islamophobic people another excuse to exploit their totally unproved knowledge and totally unproved theories they have. It's barbaric. Islam is not barbaric in the slightest. Islam is not barbaric. When they talk about barbaric, they tell us that you'll get your head chomped off. Italy was holding recently. Italy have stopped, or France has stopped beheading. They had the custom of beheading way after the world had stopped it. So they were beheading people, and no one mentions them. But Islam is considered as barbaric. How is that even plausible? And again, barbarism, they say that we are barbaric. That's totally a misconception, and that definitely has to go with our own failures, as Muslims haven't been able to promote their religion as well. I believe that they definitely need to work on their promotion as well, and they need to justify their religion. They need to defend it. But I don't think there has been enough effort for it. Again, hostility towards Islam is an excuse to exclude Muslims from media. So as Muslims aren't able to explain themselves, that's also because they have been excluded from the media. Let them talk at least. Let the people hear what they have to say about the matter, and then we'll form an opinion. Then we'll see how barbaric Islam is. But that's not really what the international media is doing. Look at the CNN. They're totally in the favor of Israel, and they're not really promoting what has been done to Palestine. It's not that's totally the case of Islamophobia, and they definitely want to please their viewers. Look at the anthem of Israel. They literally talk about killing Muslims, and they literally talk about destroying Baghdad and all the Muslim states that were present in at one point in time. They are literally talking about terrorism in their anthem, but since the coverage, the media gives them leverage, the leverage allows them to have their terrorist ideologies, and at the same time act as the way they do. So manifestations of Islamophobia, media coverage, we talked about it. When you control the media, you control the spread of information, and thus you control the mindsets of people who follow you. That's something that the media should take in consideration, and that Islamophobia is caused mainly because media says it is as so. So media shouldn't do it. Media shouldn't promote such things, and there is nothing backed up by facts when they talk about Islam being a terrorist religion. There's nothing backing them up. They're basically that's just their opinion and speculation. That's just not something that journalism promotes as well. You don't have any facts to back your opinions up. Secondly, organizations against Islam. For example, Stop Islamization of Europe is an organization that was holding protests recently in United Kingdom as well as Denmark about not having mosques and stop wearing hijabs. How is that hurting anyone? It's our culture, and we are definitely going to follow it. And if you want a logical explanation, well, you need to study Islam before you give any statements. Then, and they are not doing that. If they study and give us a reason for that, we'll definitely be much more accommodating. But there's nothing backing those statements up. Stop mosques. Why should we stop going to mosques? Why is that such a problem to you guys? Conclusion: as we say, some of the aspects that act as the major reason for Islamophobia, it is to be known that Islam is a religion of peace, and any such information, whether spread by the media or the organization, is simply false. Again, you need to be backed up. If there is nothing to back you up, they pull these instances and incidents from the past where Islam has been shown to be a terrorist religion, like 9/11 or the Al Qaeda. Well, what they don't tell us that non-Muslims also act as terrorists. Christchurch was the most popular example of that. Again, how you promote these things is definitely affecting people's opinion as well. Afghanistan is seen as a terrorist country. While we know what happened there, we know how much United States was at fault when it comes to that specific war. We know what happened there, and they are promoting as if the Afghanistan was the one that's mainly doing it. Jihadists, they say, when they use the word jihadists, they basically mean terrorists, and that's not something that's ever justifiable by their words, because there's nothing to back them up. So I hope you all understood what I wanted to deliver, and I hope you understand the situation that Islamophobia has taken in these past few years. Thank you very much.